Welcome back to the Eric Krown crypto channel. Wishing you a happy early start to this nice Thursday morning here as we pick up the debris after the nice FOMC meeting last night, of which Bitcoin making some nice highs, making some nice lows. And where do the chips kind of fall right now? Well, I wanted to follow up on that, of course, go over the short-term timeframes and then thread them into the medium-term timeframes because there are yet another couple of setups that I do think are rather juicy here. And before that we do get into it, I do want to let you know that there has been a nice shill link in the description below for Bybit's new trading competition. I always want to say that, hey, first, full disclosure, that is an affiliate link. And then second, please be aware that these sort of tournaments are just there to promote you to do typically dumb shit. And in order to not do dumb shit, I would suggest that if you are intent on actually entering into one of these tournaments, which, hey, you actually could, I guess, win, more importantly, it would be very wise to actually have a real strategy. So I'll be releasing a video a little bit later today going over a bit of a pretty simple strategy that you can employ if you so desire. And if that is not all good, then I would humbly say, probably not the best idea to just go into a nice little gambling tournament. All right, sweet. Let's just jump right on into it. I want to start off today's analysis with a continuation of yesterday's short-term time frame analysis. So yesterday's short-term time frame analysis, we were looking at the hourly on the HPDR indicator over here as beginning a signal within this region for a likely pullback. Now, what slipped my mind yesterday, right before going over that yesterday, is that obviously FOMC meeting later that day did suggest to expect a bit of fuckery, but funnily enough, that pullback did indeed happen. We did get the move to the range lows here at about 17,550 or so. So that was your, I think it was like close to 1.5 to 2% move right there. But ultimately, whenever we do have some sort of an economic event like that, you can expect shit like this. So do be aware that if you are using this as your source of edge, that is a consideration you definitely do want to be having. Anyways, on the other side, we actually do have another setup yet again today in this case with the HPDR indicator and also the Jewel light as well. Anyways, in this case, we do see a few closures below the bottom side of the blue 50% historical range lows right here. And that is going to then initiate the secondary condition where we want to be looking at volatility declining on the moving average for the BBWP indicator on a close over close basis. And this happens for just literally one closure right here. It's not super emphatic, so I would say that that would be a bit of a signal to the more conservative people out there that perhaps this is maybe not the one that you're looking for, but this setup has been tested in this way. And we could just go reference the data and see what it suggests, because that would suggest essentially a higher probability for a bounce from this region on the short-term timeframes before anything else. So let's go reference the data over here. Here is the hourly for the HPDR. We've seen it a couple times already. It's the same win rate as yesterday, basically. I haven't added any new trades to this one just yet. In fact, I'm working on the master stats list actually as we speak, which is going to be uploaded to the quant program at the end of this month. You know, I kind of want to save everything for once right there. Anyways, again, 36 out of 50 with this particular setup. It did have this, these results on average. And then we can go reference the average percentage gain and also the average percentage loss, by the way, which are pretty much equal here, very, very close. And then, of course, the first standard deviation where we expect the results to fall between, and then also the time from that signal to where we expect, the result to kind of come in as well. So in this case, on average, for the time taken for the winning setups did take a little bit over 10 hours. And for the losing setups, actually almost double that at 17 and a half. Or close to doubles that. So that does suggest that the longer that time drones on here, the more and more likely that this setup is to fail. Anyways, as far as the average goes, from this setup, the average gain has been about 2 and 20. And on the other side, for the losing side, would be 242. And the first standard deviation, as you can see, represents a range between about 1% all the way up to almost 3.5. So looking at price action over here from this signal given, what are we essentially looking at? Well, we're essentially looking at a likelihood, a high probability of a bounce to the tune of, what was it, like 220? Yeah, about 220, which would put Bitcoin basically just above 18,000 bucks yet again. So it does suggest that it's more likely to trade sideways and up from this region over the next 10 hours. But this one fired off when? 2 a.m. my time or 3 a.m. my time. So basically, if you're looking at this on average for the time transpired, then we would be looking basically around US market open, give or take an hour from that number. In the meantime, short term, probably a bit more sideways. And yes, this one can come back down to test around the range lows. That's completely fine. The only way to invalidate this one is to actually close below the range lows, which is the same as yesterday at 17,550. If you want to, if you kind of want to round it out there, especially on CME. Anyways, taking this one step further and going over here to the hourly for the Joule. This is actually the chart layout that I typically do trade. Although I usually do have BBWP on there as well. Depending upon what I'm currently focusing on. But in this case, that is beside the point. I'm actually going to upload a video on this particular strategy for a different time frame, but this is the hourly right here. It's a very simple strategy, or dare I say simple strategy, where basically we look for the hourly to turn white on the Joule light, which is kind of a mouthful right there, on the first tick below 35. And in this case, we obviously have our first tick below 35 right here. Turns white right there. And again, that initiates a setup that anywhere between that official signal and the range lows, which again is 17,550 or 17,5 depending upon your exchange, then I do kind of look at this as more likely to bounce. We can go reference the stats for this one, completely different setup obviously, but these stats are actually, funnily enough, somewhat similar. So here's the hourly for the Joule. Or Joule Light, 37 out of 50 with the setup had this, were winners. And let's see, looking at the average percentage gain for the winning trades was 2 and 11 versus the losing trades, which was significantly more. That is because this data was within mind for the worst case scenario. So I did not take the liberty of averaging those entries out. I took it literally at face value, which is obviously not going to be optimal. But that's kind of the way that I like to test things because I want to know what's the worst case scenario basically. Anyways, first aviation, you get the idea right here, but very, very similar numbers. And from that price point, what essentially would we be looking at? Again, 2% puts you back above $18,000. So I do think that Bitcoin's kind of poised to, maybe come back down and retest lows, completely fine, but likely bounce up, before end of week here, back above 18 or so. Something like that would kind of make sense. Of course, these are statistical setups, not certainties. And at the end of the day, if Bitcoin does start to crack below the range lows, that's at the point where that gets invalidated, and I'd be looking somewhere around the low 17s. Let's call it 17.2 to 17.1, or maybe even 17 even. Anyways, with that in mind, let's now go reference the ranges from a different perspective over here. Good old line drawing, of which yesterday, yeah, we did hit into the 618. So you could say that target was effectively met on CME. The high of the day was 18,420, great number right there. The 618 was a few bucks higher than that. And fair enough. And that's the same thing over here basically again. So if we're looking at the medium, maybe even higher term timeframes in this case, I'll still be looking at about 17.5 as a base versus 18.5 as a ceiling right there, to put it into kind of layman's terms. Anyways, referencing the 12-hour yet again, I do want to follow up on the volatility reads and also on the other signals that we are looking at. And the 12-hour BBWP representing volatility is starting to really expand here, as is the daily, I think. No, the daily is actually not, which is very interesting. I don't know what to make of that, actually. 12-hour RSI, do we still have that hidden bearish divergence in play? No, we do not. That obviously already played out. That was the move from basically 17 to where we're at, right, or the high of yesterday, 18.5. So that's no longer relevant to the conversation. But what is relevant, or at least still relevant, is the 12-hour Joule, which maintains its upside curvature. I can't even fucking speak, apparently, and it's supported by DMI right here. So I do look at that as still likely to trade sideways and try another move to the upside. As long as that condition is met. Anyways, moving through it now, let's go reference lower term timeframe stochastic momentum, see where the pivots are currently coming in around. Daily is again still to the upside, which is very aggressive right here, getting, like, I would say quite aggressive. Will be turning down, however, today with any sort of a closure below 17,900. So obviously Bitcoin's trading below that right now. If it fails to reclaim that before the end of the day, we will start to see this turn down for the first time basically since late November, where this rally really started to get going. 12-hour time frame is also going to be showing downside as long as Bitcoin's below 17,950. 6-hour time frame is going to be showing downside as long as Bitcoin's below 18. 4-hour time frame is going to be showing downside as long as Bitcoin's below 18.3. And the hourly time frame is going to be showing it's actually down as well as long as Bitcoin's below 17,720. But as you can see, it's kind of playing opposite right there. So what does that likely align with? It likely aligns with at least sideways and probably another few tries to the downside of the overall range here. But again, assuming that Bitcoin fails to break that, then naturally those momentum oscillators will reset, and you'll probably get another move back up to the top side of the range before anything else is decided. Now that we do have a very obvious rejection from yesterday's business, I would say that any sort of a trade back above yesterday's high, especially a closure above yesterday's high, you're very likely going to see. Very likely. I don't like using these sort of more direct terms, but I will in this case. But you're very likely to see a rally into the mid-19s, maybe even $20,000 in the coming weeks. Again, if that is to happen, and again, as long as Bitcoin trades sideways here, that is all good in the hood. Anything above 17.5 is good for the boo laws and keeps the balls in their court. And short term is essentially a bit of a reset. Anyways, I think that that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this particular one. I didn't go over the 2-day time frame over here, but it did close last night. So if you are familiar with this channel, I won't go through the full explanation of this, but basically we are starting to see volatility expansion on the 2-day time frame. 2-day stochastic momentum also remains to the upside as long as Bitcoin's above 16,750. Long way of saying, I'm basically looking at short-term, medium term as still favoring the boo laws, especially as long as you're above 17.5 on a closing basis. Below 17.5, very likely back down to low 17s. Below 17 is where the Barras take over back again. We get to deal with that fun business. Anyways, I think that's a good place for me to be leaving off right here. I want to be wishing you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.